I really like to take my photos into kind of this otherworldly, almost kind of magical feel. You know, it's not just like your typical like senior pictures, family photos, you know, everything. Like a lot of people are doing that now in the photography world. And I've always just liked doing something different, and I really liked the look of photo shoots from like high fashion magazines because they're just very elegant and feminine, and I really like that look.
Oh my gosh, you should be in Vogue, girl.
It's almost kind of like a childhood dream kind of coming to life when I'm shooting with my personal photography. And that really was inspired by a lot of video games I played growing up, like Elder Scrolls and Dragon Age, and also movies like Lord of the Rings and Chronicles of Narnia, and just a lot of those like fantasy kind of genres. And also from a lot of like fairy tale books and everything that I loved reading as a kid. When I first started taking pictures, it was kind of just with friends, like we'd goof off and dress in really funny things and do like wild makeup and just kind of took pictures of each other, and it was a lot of fun. And I knew nothing of photography. I never like shot in manual mode or anything. I first started getting seriously into it when I was in high school. I was about 16 or 17, and I bought my own camera, and I was so excited. And it's actually the one I still use today. I do a lot of props, so swords or like a lot of things you would kind of see in movies. I really love to shoot in nature. It gives it this big feel. And I can like experiment a lot more when I'm shooting in nature and experiment with colors and different things to really like bring pictures to life. Most of the props and clothing articles I find are from thrift stores or whatever. I'll just like find some really random things and think that, you know, that would look good in some photos. So, and it's only like a couple dollars, and I can use it again and again. But it just, I really like to experiment with different looks and different props and everything. Like today I used a prism a lot of the time, and I just got that as like at like a craft store, and it gives this like really cool reflective kind of color rainbow thing that makes the picture really interesting.
Experimenting. We'll see if it looks good. If it doesn't, then okay.
Some other things I've used, I like to use tinsel because that kind of gives this like twinkly bokeh in front of the subject or the model. And I like to use like different curtains and sheets because I mean when they're flowing they just look gorgeous. So I wrap my model in it, or I kind of bring it up to my camera and it'll kind of create like something similar to a wall. And that way it helps too if there's something distracting in the picture, you can just cover it up. I've used napkin rings. I used that with my friend a while ago, and it created this really cool effect around her. Sometimes I found some vintage pieces that are really one of a kind, and they make the photo like kind of really fun and like come to life a little bit. I really liked working with very patchy lighting, so working with a lot of shadows, and I think that creates like a really interesting photo. The first spot that we shot at today with Eva was actually at a nature trail close to where my parents' house is, where I grew up. That was actually one of the first spots that I would take pictures with my friends. So it was kind of cool to go back there and take some pictures and kind of compare them to some of the first pictures I took like so many years ago. I think it was like nearly 10 years ago now. Because those first pictures were like so bad. They're so blown out. Like I can't, there's no comparison there. I was kind of blown away by how much progression there was between the two today and, like 10 years ago. On top of doing my personal photography, I do post-production for photos, so basically just editing photos for a photography studio in Northeast Minneapolis called Sugar and Spice. And I really enjoy that because it's an all-female team. We're all like really close. It's kind of nice to have another job in the photography field, so kind of have like more experience with that, and I'm always doing something I love. One of my favorite things about photography since the very beginning is kind of experimenting with post-production, like editing, after I take the photos, because you can add a lot of effects and manipulate the photo like however you want. Something that's really motivated me to get back into photography is social media. So like Instagram, there are so many really talented photographers that post a lot of their work there. So I really wanted to get in on that and kind of post photos that I take. So I've been doing that for the past year or so, and I've gained like a decent following. It's like always kind of getting a bit bigger, but I'm hoping I can gain enough of a following there that people will start reaching out to me and wanting to shoot with me. Throughout the years, as I've been doing photography and kind of gaining more experience, my style has definitely evolved and definitely progressed to a point where I'm actually really proud of like a lot of the photos I've taken. I think it's a process. You're always learning new techniques, new things are coming out to try. So I'm always like willing to learn, and I'm really excited to like see how it progresses in the future.
Visit pioneer.org/postcards to catch up on missed episodes and to find out more about your favorite segments. This program on Pioneer Public Television is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. Additional support provided by Mark and Margaret Yakel-Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. ShalomHillFarm.org. Live Wide Open, a regional movement that encourages people to make a great life for themselves in west central Minnesota. More at livewideopen.com. Alexandria, Minnesota, a year-round destination with hundreds of lakes, trails, and attractions for memorable vacations and events. More information at explorealex.com.